What was it that someone was asking about kissing children in the synagogue? You guys heard about this halacha? It's mentioned Orach Chaim. What shouldn't you do? This is one of the hakpadot of the Hasidic Ashkenaz, that they would not kiss their children in the synagogue. After Birkat Kohanim, it's a Sephardic thing. Sometimes they Sephardim kiss a lot more in the synagogue than, let's say, people like you and I from the Western world are used to. But there is this idea that Hasidic Ashkenaz felt it wasn't right, and it's basically being recorded in the books. But I must say that that's nicht kein halacha, because just because they had a hakpada of some sort, it doesn't mean it's a binding halacha for everybody. What's the best example thereof of a hakpada of the Hasidic Ashkenaz was that if there was mixed seating at the Sheva Brachas, so you can't say the Sheva Brachas, you can't say B'simcha B'muno. It's a problem. You have to have separate seating at Sheva Brachas in order to be able to say this special zimun. You're familiar with this halacha? So Rav Aviner points this one out. Yeah, it's in the books. It's on there. The problem is that the sages assumed that you could have mixed seating at Sudos Mitzvah. It's a Litvish thing also. It's mentioned explicitly in the Mishnah in Pesachim. Even the Korban Pesach is as Sudos Mitzvah as anything else. It's more of a Sudos Mitzvah than weddings. Why is it a Sudos Mitzvah? Because everybody's obligated to eat, and it's on a holiday, and it's eating Kudshim. The Sudas Mitzvah we learn from the Achilas Kudshim. So there it's explicit that you do have mixed seating. And they tell a classic story about Chafetz Chaim, how he was makpid. He sat with the female members of his family on Shabbos, and there was a Hasidic Rav, I think Shapiro, who wanted to be his guest on Shabbos. And he asked that, Mr. Chafetz Chaim, Rav Chafetz Chaim, could we please have separate seating? He's like, then you're not welcome at my table. So this is Hakpadah. Interestingly enough, this Hakpadah of always having separate seating is something I found in the Merkaz Chassid handbook. Basically, if you want to be card-carrying Merkaznik, you have to follow to certain rules that they took upon themselves. And one of them was no mixed seating. It has been pointed out by others, Rav Tendler's Talmidim, usually classic Litvaks from, let's say, the Western world. We never had such a thing. And Adarabba, like Rav Schechter has pointed out, it's better to have mixed seating at weddings. Sheva Brachas, why? Why should the Chassan and the Kal be the only ones who get married? Best time to make shidduchim. And indeed, at least when we were younger, my wife and I had quite a lot of success at making shidduchim using these methods because of mixed Sheva Brachas and mixed weddings. And Yirbu B'Yisrael, there should be more weddings, and those weddings should lead to more weddings. So either way, they said no kissing the children in shul. And they said, because you're supposed to show love for God, but how can you do that? You're showing love for your kids, you don't love God. It's like you're loving God less. And the problem is that we have examples of the greatest prophets, who, when they were receiving the Shekhinah, also kissed their loved ones. It says that God first appeared to Moses at Sinai and had to convince him. For 7 days, he was arguing back and forth. And then Moses agreed to go. The Torah says, God said to Aaron, go out to the desert and find Moses. And he says, Aaron went, found him at the mountain of God. Why is it the mountain of God? As Unkla says, it was the mountain on which God would have revealed himself a year later. And he kissed him. Aaron kissed his brother. Now, they had both received a prophetic mission together. At the same time, God is telling Moses, go back to Egypt because I'm sending you on a mission and Aaron will be your spokesman. Aaron was told, go out and find Moses. You guys have to go together to do this thing. And it says Moses told Aaron exactly what the mission was. So on top of Sinai, when they are given their charge, Aaron kissed Moses. By the way, pointed out, it's relevant to this week's parsha. Not this week's parsha. Yosef. I was learning this with my son, so that's why I'm thinking it's not this week's parsha. Yosef had his dreams. Why was Jacob guarding the matter? Aviv Shamar Tadavar. Why was he guarding it and looking to what happened? Because he sees that Joseph is starting on the path of prophecy. It might be he's the chosen one. He's already having prophetic dreams. It's just a matter of time before, God's going to appear to him just like he appeared to me and my father and my father's father. So the opposite, Moses is the opposite of Aaron. When Joseph starts on his prophetic journey, his brothers are extremely jealous of him. Whereas Moses starts to show signs, or straight up, God has spoken to me. Aaron, instead of being jealous, is actually very happy for his younger brother. That's why he gave him a kiss. Either way, you have that example. Jacob was getting ready to, not Jacob. Yes, Jacob was getting ready to be in the prophetic mood. He has to focus, get the Shekhinah, the Hashra'at Shekhinah, to the divine spirit to rest upon him before he blessed his children. What did it say he did? He kissed Ephraim and Menashe, correct? Before he blessed them. Isaac needed to summon also the spirit, the divine inspiration, in order for him to bless his intended son. So what did he do? Said, son, I need you to put me in a good mood. Get me good food and good drink. Okay? And he also said, give me a kiss. And he smelled his son. It smells really good. Now I'm in the mood. Wetain the Elohim. If he's going to be praying to God, to help him bless his son, why would he be kissing him? And there's many other examples. Samuel kissed Saul also at the event of his anointing. Okay, Samuel had to anoint Saul, and he gave him a big kiss. There's nothing wrong with that. Why? Because as the halacha implicitly says, showing love for God is not the same as showing love. I'll give you 3 types of love. I love my wife, I love my children, I love chicken, and I love God. That's the same verb used in both Hebrew and English in all 4 instances, but they do not mean the same thing at all. So confusing. Or that God is a jealous God. Remember, God's jealousy. What is that? What invokes God's jealousy? Idolatry. Idolatry and adultery sound the same, but idolatry and adultery are not the same thing. Adultery is only a mashal for idolatry. What makes God a jealous God is not that, let's say, you have a wife, or if you're a woman, that you have a husband whom you love. That does not affect your service of God in any way. As a matter of fact, it's quite necessary. If you want to be a complete person, you have to have a spouse. Rather, it means your love of God means that you love God solely in a religious sense. He is the sole object of your devotion. That's what it's supposed to mean. Or, like I said, they only use adultery. The prophets use adultery as the mashal, straying after other gods. Or put this in bold letters. That is, the love of God our prophets discussed refers to exclusivity of religious devotion to the exclusion of idolatry. But love for other people is another issue altogether. That's why we have to be very keen when we study these halachot. We open up Orach Chaim. We have to know what's halacha and what is a particular hakpadah of a particular religious group that existed in a certain time and place in Jewish history. Just because the Chassidi Ashkenaz were very great, had these hakpadot, does not mean that it's binding halacha from here on in. And that's why, for example, we allow mixed eating at Sheva Brachas, and we always have. And that's why we could, kiss our children in shul. Why did this come up? Because I saw a very touching thing. This young father, well, not so young, but it was the first time his son read the Kriyat Shema in shul. Why? Because, and this is something I could actually disagree with, what's supposed to be is the chazan supposed to say Kriyat Shema out loud in order to discharge the obligation of those who don't understand, right? That's ostensibly what it is. In the Sephardic shuls around here, if there are youngsters in the crowd, so they're the ones who say Shema out loud. They have one 7-year-old say the first paragraph, and this 10-year-old say the second paragraph, and the third say the third paragraph. And that's kind of weird, right? So this young fellow had his son for the first time. Now he's going to be one of the kids who says the Shema, and it was very touching for him. And he was crying a little bit. Happened on Shabbos. They gave his son a kiss for doing it. So there are some places I know the old timers be like, "Oh, you can't do that. You kiss your son in shul," but it's a Sephardic shul too. Yes, that's what they do because it's an emotional time, and showing love for one's children and thanksgiving to God for the fact that one can raise one's children to keep the commandments is no, intrusion upon the devotion that he must show toward God. They're totally different things entirely. Let's see. I think that, by the way, you should also say that these hakpadot are the opposite of what we would consider Torah Eretz Yisrael. Why? Torah Eretz Yisrael means you got to find the sources in the words of the sages, and ideally in the words of the sages who were here in Eretz Yisrael. And even better, if they're positive traditions from the sages who enacted those rules themselves, or at least from the prophets, or even better, from Moses himself. Hakpadot that started, whether in medieval times or in the 20th century, whatever, they might be nice, but to impose them or to say that now everybody has to keep them, that is not Torah Eretz Yisrael. Otherwise, we would have to be keeping a lot more halachas that perhaps are actually holding us back.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.